guess we're officially live. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from the world today. We are thrilled, excited to have none other than Dr. Ghina Halabi with us. She's joining us from the UK. She's a space scientist, astrophysicist, executive director, and founder of She Speaks Science. So she has an amazing story about how she got a PhD in astrophysics. She's of Lebanese descent. We are very excited to have her because it is great to have more women on science on our shows. And I think March has been a month where we featured a lot of female scientists from different spectrums of science. And we're excited to have her today as well in the studio. So Ghina, welcome to Pandemic Punditry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, what do you? I mean, we were talking before the show a little bit about, this whole movement now that we are seeing in some parts of the world. Science is obviously very critical to us during the pandemic, right? It's how we're going to sort of resolve this problem that we are facing. And despite sort of that clear and clarion sort of reason for science to exist, you still have people like the anti-vaxxers, the flat earthers, the anti-mask people. There seems to be a sort of a backlash against science generally, and it's for some of us who really like science and who believe in its powers of redemption. It's highly disturbing to see that trend. What do you think personally may be at the root of some of that sort of angst or disbelief? And you would think in the 21st century, we'll be past all of that.
I agree with you, and this is a very dangerous trend indeed. This loss of trust with in science and in scientists, and this is indeed something in She Speaks Science we're trying to remedy by bringing again this relationship, this trustful relationship between the public and the scientist, by showing how science is embedded in real life and how science and technology are at the heart of innovation. And only with that will we be able to solve the existential threats that humanity will be facing in the upcoming decade. Part of the reason why this gap exists is mistrust, and mistrust sometimes stems from a lack of knowledge or lack of empathy sometimes. So this is the role of scientists and science communicators in just establishing this connection between scientists, or trying to understand the needs of people, what their concerns are, and try to address those and be part of the public discourse in all the issues that the public are facing.
So it's a really interesting observation, and I think so are you saying that essentially science needs to do a better job of telling its story in some sense? Because I think scientists love to sort of go into their labs or into their own little enclaves and sort of do their science thing, but when it comes to sort of communicating knowledge gained or things discovered, the scientists themselves are probably not the best storytellers in the world, right? So they leave it for other people to sort of do that. And maybe in that sort of position, where the scientists are busy doing science, but not very busy telling the story about what they've done or discovered, maybe that's where the gap is. And that's why we've seen these kind of, people with various stories seem to get a lot of air these days. It doesn't take much to really tell your story. I mean, put up a Facebook page, create a Twitter account, and you have 100,000 flat earthers following that, right? And all of a sudden they're talking about a story that, is very antithetical to the basis of sort of hard facts, but people seem to believe them. So it's one of those interesting conundrums, I think. And I think, so your idea of sort of empowering women to share stories through She Speaks Science seems to be actually probably have a dual purpose, I would assume. One would be to sort of get women a voice in STEM, but also to tell the story of science better. Am I saying that or summarizing that correctly?
Yes, that's right. I think the responsibility falls on a couple of parties. One is the scientists. We as scientists are responsible for communicating our science in ways that people can understand and connect with. So, when it comes to science communication, there's a model that is very famous in the past, it used to be very famous in the past, which is the deficit model, which assumes that people are not connecting with the science because of a lack of information. And then what you try to do is to spoon feed or to dumb down this information to be able to communicate it. Research shows that this model doesn't work. What we need to do is to build empathy and build a connection and build a story of our research, of our science that people can relate to. And what better vehicle can you think of to be able to build that connection and send this message than a story? So this is something that I do. I'm personally a storyteller. I try to explain the research that I do in astrophysics in story forms. And I also train scientists as well as, people in innovation and entrepreneurs, for example, as well as women specifically, on how they can tell their story, because this is essential to connect. We connect at a very primal level through story, through emotion. So the responsibility is partly with the scientists to, get proper training to be able to communicate research in ways that people can understand and connect with. There's also the role of science communicators, because as you mentioned, scientists are often really very busy doing their research, and especially with a certain research culture that has propagated the thought that, publish or perish idea, like we need to be there's this somebody called it the hamsterization of science. We're like constantly on the grind trying to produce and publish, and this leaves very little time to communicate with the public. So what we need to do is to free up the scientists a little bit so that they would be able to engage in social issues that are relevant to the people. And then we stop seeing scientists as these people in the ivory towers, but actually people who are one of us, who are part of our discourse. The responsibility also lies in institutions to be able to enhance this this connection by freeing up scientists, as I said, by providing funding for communicating science, and by enabling science communicators who would be dedicated to communicate the science, because it's a time-consuming affair. To be able to communicate your science properly, you really need to sit down and have this kind of empathy and try to understand your audience well. And all of this requires a time investment, as well as the role of start a certain, like a movement around the scientific topic, and anybody can pitch in, and this facilitates the spread of disinformation, as well as fake news, as you said as well. And we need gatekeepers to be able to provide reliable information that the people can go to, and reliable sources that people can go to. So the role falls on different parties, but there's no escape from trying to build this relationship between the public and the media and the policymakers, as well as the scientists.
Karthika?
Actually, for me, it was really interesting hearing Ghina talk, and Lavi, I'm sure you felt the same way. For us as marketers, what it really sounds like is you're saying science should do a better job of marketing itself, presenting itself, and having science influencers who can connect with the different communities to tell the story.
Yes, that's true.
Right. Sorry, Lavi.
No, go ahead. So it's fascinating. I think I love Gina's take on this whole issue of the question that I initially sort of asked about, how do you deal with this? And I think I'm wondering, Gina, whether some of these sort of institutionalized practices within academia, the public, publisher perish, this sort of ivory tower, talking down, dumbing down things. Do you think that has largely been a function of the fact that sciences till recently have been a very much a male-dominated business or vocation?
Yes, that's true. If you look at the stereotypical models in role models in science, we when you look at statistics, generally science and STEM fields are very much male dominated. The statistics and the numbers show that clearly. If you look at the space workforce, for example, women constitute only 20%. If you look at the numbers globally, STEM-based careers, women are about 29%. In the UK, where I live now, in Cambridge, I live in Cambridge, so in the UK, the numbers are also about 22%. So, we seem to be stuck at this 20% level. If you also look at the engineering workforce, 12% are women. So we know that that women are underrepresented, underpromoted, underpaid in STEM fields, and so a stereotypical role model in science has been a middle-aged white man, and so scientists have become models or characters that people need to look up to. But in She Speaks Science, we're trying to reverse this trend. We're trying to say that scientists are not just people you need to look up to, but also identify with. And so how do you identify with scientists? Through story, you can do two things. I already mentioned that through storytelling, and on She Speaks Science, we publish stories about all STEM subjects: astronomy, space exploration, chemistry, physics, biology, medicine, etc. Through story as a vehicle, you engage and you make people connect, because the story brings out the human aspect of science. Why is science important for me? What does it do for me? How does it improve my life? But it also does another thing. If you look at any story, any book you pick up, any film you see, there is a character, and the character undergoes through some struggle. So struggle is at the heart of the story. If you're watching a film and nothing happens, this is the recipe for a disastrous film. You pick a book up, if nothing happens, you just can never continue with it. So there's this struggle and overcoming of struggle. Now, if we bring science through storytelling, through this story of a protagonist, a hero, if you want, who is looking for truth, who is searching for truth, and faces these obstacles along the way, this struggle along the way. What kind of message are you sending to the public? What kind of message are you sending to the young people? You're telling them that, look, STEM is exciting, it's fun, it's important, but it's also difficult, and it's okay to struggle. If I tell you now, Kartika or Lavindra, close your eyes and imagine you're scientists, you'd probably imagine Einstein or a man in a white robe. And generally speaking, when people think about scientists, they imagine them as these geniuses whose inspiration comes from somewhere down from the sky. But actually, scientists face struggles, and not until when we are able to overcome these struggles do we reach for the truth or the scientific discovery. And so the same thing with stories. And actually, there's educational psychology research that has shown that students who are exposed to stories of struggle of scientists are better able to identify with scientists and imagine themselves as scientists, and more motivated to do science. So you see, by using storytelling, you also bring this idea of struggle. You normalize the concept of failure, and so you build resilience. You start building resilience in young explorers. So this is the double role of story that we're trying to do. And also, as part of our work in She Speaks Science, what we do is storytelling workshops at schools where, we don't just tell students what the topic is about. If I'm talking about astronomy, it's not just telling them about the stars and the planets, etc. We also do these storytelling workshops where students work in groups and try to imagine, what would it take to go to Mars? So what do we need? How do we need to work together? What kind of obstacles and dangers would we face? What do we need to think? What do we need to think about and plan? So this also, through the storytelling aspect, what do you build? You build a sense of collaboration, teamwork. And these are things that are really essential, and the World Economic Forum has called them as the important skills for the 21st century: to communicate, to collaborate, to work in teams. And this is something that also storytelling could achieve in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. Go ahead, Karthika. I know
I actually have a follow-up question. It's something Lavin and I were chatting about before you joined today, Gina. Given your astrophysicist background and the fact that you love space and exploration, do you think humankind should be an interplanetary species, or could be an interplanetary species, as Elon Musk would say?
Well, I mean, looking just at the way things are going, I wouldn't really, I definitely think this is a possibility. I believe in it, and this is the future. We as species are explorers. Exploration is in our DNA. And you have seen that this space exploration isn't just for the sake of going into space and exploring new worlds. This exploration has been helping us on Earth in many different ways, through communication, through medical applications, technology, energy, everything. So space exploration is definitely, going to Mars and beyond is definitely something to look out for in the future. And we don't have to think short term, the next 10 years, 50 years, there's no limit to what humanity can achieve as long as we are, committed to sustainability, to inclusion, to diversity. When everybody is part of the picture, when space exploration is democratized, as some would say, and definitely it's an inclusive endeavor that brings all voices on board.
Brilliant. I see that one of our listeners, Ritu Chatwale, said the use of stories so fundamental to our learning at all ages. This is a wonderful way to bring STEM into lives and promote it as a way of life. I also noticed that, to back up that point, that a lot of the work that you're doing revolves around children and kids. What I mean, I can guess at the thought process there, but I would love for you to articulate why you're focusing on that segment of our population.
STEM is at the heart of our societies, is the driver of, when we say STEM, to make it clear for everybody, we're talking about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as medicine, of course, including medicine. And so STEM is at the heart of innovation in our societies. Our societies rely on STEM to improve, to better human lives, etc. And who will be the innovators of the future? It's the young people who are, looking into, fields to study and things to engage in. And so engaging the young people is essential. And also, I work with young people because of this, disproportionate representation in STEM. We want to encourage more girls into STEM, but at the same time, we need to make the system more welcoming and more accommodating for women. It's not, the endeavor is multifaceted. So me working with young people through, stories, online, through workshops, through social media campaigns, exposing them to this huge number of role models and diverse role models, because you know very well, like for young people to identify with a scientist, they have to be somebody who looks similar to them, who's from the same background, who has shared a certain experience. So we try to diversify our role models so we can attract a diversity of young people as well, girls, boys, minorities, everybody. So focusing on the education of the young people is really essential so that in the next 5, 10, 20 years, we have good representation in the STEM workforce.
So interesting. That's just in the short time we have. I just wanted to switch gears a little bit and ask you. So, what aspects of space, as a space scientist, are you particularly sort of focusing on in terms of research and as a passion? I mean, what is it in this rather vast field of astrophysics that grabs your attention, and why?
My specialty has always been stars and how stars evolve, how they're born, how they live, and how they die. Excuse me. At the moment, I don't do much research. I work on STEM communication. I work on She Speaks Science, and I work with young generations, as well as developing entrepreneurship programs and entrepreneurship education for women at the Cambridge Business School, as well as doing consultancy work within the space sector and within storytelling. So I do less of research, but throughout my PhD and postdoc years, I graduated from the American University of Beirut. I'm Lebanese by background, and in Cambridge, and then I moved to Cambridge to do my postdoc. And my research throughout these years have been on stars. So sometimes when you look at stars, so actually, just to reel back a little bit, you know that stars, we see their light through telescopes. So what is accessible for us in stars is the outer layer, the atmosphere, what we see at the stellar surface. What is happening inside remains, in most cases, obscure to us. Now we have developed advanced technologies and science. I don't know if you know about something called astroseismology, which looks deeper into the star. But keeping that aside, generally speaking, the stellar interiors remain inaccessible. So what we do is we work with the physics equations that we know about the conditions inside the star and the boundary conditions of the star. So we know what's happening at the surface, and we input all of these like a mix. We program that, and the computer code would give us models or snapshots of the star throughout its life. And these we call models, or predictions of what the star looks like from its center to its surface.
Oh, wow.
And then we look at this model, we see, okay, this star has a certain brightness, a certain chemical composition. We compare it to what we see in the sky. And if it fits, if it matches the observation, we think, okay, right, our model works. If it doesn't, we go back to our physics, improve, and do the same process again. So this has been the biggest chunk of my research in astrophysics.
Wow, super impressive. Okay, so it's amazing how scientists like you discern sort of these truths from the equations and models and algorithms and data without physically actually seeing it, right? Because you're not able to actually go in and look at it like you would an object on the planet itself. That always fascinates me, that all of that math can actually figure out things that are millions of miles away, and that's just fascinating. So if you were to sort of give advice to somebody listening, maybe it's a mother or it's a parent with young kids, how would you encourage them to sort of embrace STEM, right? And get, I mean, your story itself is fascinating. I've heard about the belching buses and how you commuted to Beirut to study, and that's itself is a separate conversation we could have. But how would you sort of advise them to sort of encourage their children and young adults to sort of embrace a STEM career? And what do you think is the most kind of easiest way to do that, and why should they sort of encourage them to do that?
At She Speaks Science, what lies at the heart of She Speaks Science is the concept of owning your story. So what we tell the people we engage with is own your story. So to your listeners, Lavendra and Karthika, if you are a scientist, I would tell you, my humble opinion is for you to own your story. because no matter where you're speaking or where you are, somebody is looking up to you as the role model. So by owning this adventure you've been through, by owning this experience, you are inspiring someone who is trying in their own way. To the people, to the young people and to their parents, I also say own your story. If you are passionate about STEM subjects, if you like science and you want to explore and you want to go to Mars and you like maths or engineering and you think it's not for you, throw that thought away. Own your story and own your desire to become a scientist, because you can, with hard work, with determination and persistence and resilience, you can get there, and try to find ways to get there. Look for people who might be doing what you'd like to do in the future. Connect with them, ask them for advice, ask them for mentorship. And for the parents who are listening, I would say be conscious of the toys you give your children. Are you giving your girls trains and volcano models and rockets as well? Try to expose them to a wide variety of objects, of things, of ideas, and let them choose. It's okay, whatever they decide to go with, that's fine, as long as they have that exposure. And try to nurture this desire for them to explore, instead of trying to be limited by certain stereotypes of who a scientist.
So I assume that your family was very encouraging of what you were doing as a child, and that's why you're here. So am I correct to assume that?
It's right. I'm very lucky to have been born in a family who never thought there's anything I couldn't do because of my gender. There was no limitation on my capabilities because, I was a girl. I have two siblings, a sister and a brother, and my parents have always treated us as, equal in terms of, scientific capabilities. And we ended up being me, the physicist and astrophysicist, my sister is a biologist, and my brother is an engineer and a chemist. And, we never thought there's anything we couldn't achieve because of our gender. And I encourage the parents and the children to think the same way. Being a woman or being a girl doesn't really put any limitations whatsoever on what you can achieve.
Fabulous.
Just a final sort of question. I think lots of our viewers are interested to find out how more women can be part of She Speaks Science.
Yes, thank you, Karthika, for that. And a message to the listeners to get involved if they like, if they are committed to this mission of ours, of this, to further this agenda of gender equality and quality education for everybody, for girls and for boys. I encourage them to get involved. If you are a scientist, you can get involved as a storyteller. You can join us as a team member. Our stories now, which are published monthly, our monthly publication is available in 5 languages. It's in English, in Arabic, Italian, Spanish, and German. So we also always welcome translators who are happy to translate our stories. And you could also partner with us and try our workshops, perhaps, for the teachers and the educators out there who would like to try these workshops for their students. I encourage you to go on shespeaksscience.com and you click on Get Involved, and all the details are there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know we had limited time with you today, half an hour, and I know you're very busy. So Ghina, thank you so much. It's been a fascinating conversation. We're really pleased to have you. I'm assuming that if there are other female scientists in the STEM world who probably want to learn how to tell their story better, you could be a potential resource for them as well.
Yes, that's right. I train scientists and researchers and innovators and entrepreneurs on storytelling. And storytelling as an art is a really is a fascinating tool to communicate clearly. By what I train scientists to do is to own their background and their stories and their experience and bring that to the light so that they can inspire, be unique and authentic and different, and as well as embedding storytelling techniques in the communication so that they would be communicating more clearly with their audiences. And I also encourage people to connect with me on LinkedIn, for example, or to visit my website, gina.co.uk, GHINA.co.uk, and I'm always happy to hear from them and in any way I can.
Thank you so much. We will do that, and we'll connect you offline potentially with some scientists that we've had on the show as well.
I'd love to.
That'll be great.
Thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure having to be with you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Gina.
Thank
All
you
the
so
very
much.
best. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.